WADR, promoting dialogue. At 6 p.m. in Dakar and 7 p.m. in Abuja. Good evening and welcome to Newslink Live, coming to you on West Africa Democracy Radio at 94.9 FM and around the world at WADR.org. First, the top stories. Nigerian lawmakers clash over proposed changes to Electoral Act. Reaction trails AU proposal seeking global recognition of transatlantic slave trade as grave as crime against humanity.
The question is even more than reparation, is even more than restitution. It's about the place that Africa and the global south is occupying in international relations.
Liberia's Justice Ministry orders disbandment of illegal parasecurity group amidst rising public concerns. And Niger and Algeria renew diplomatic relations as General Chani concludes high-level visit to Algiers.
It is through these structural projects and the brotherhood between our peoples that we will succeed in all sincerity.
Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
On the news, this is More Edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin in Nigeria, where lawmakers at the National Assembly clash over proposed changes to the country's Electoral Act. Debates regarding the electronic transmission of election results sparked heightened tension during the plenary session on Tuesday. These disagreements arise as the Senate moves forward with amendments to the law amid increasing political interest in the upcoming 2027 elections. WDL's Abuja correspondent Yechin Sasic reports.
Proceedings turned rowdy in the House of Representatives after a motion seeking to rescind an earlier decision mandating real-time electronic transmission of election results generated heated exchanges among lawmakers. Some legislators challenged the outcome of a voice vote on the motion, arguing that opposition voices appeared louder. This situation led to protests on the floor before the Speaker forwarded the session to an executive meeting to restore order. The controversy reflects wider disagreements within the National Assembly whether electronic transmission should remain compulsory or be modified to allow alternatives where technological challenges exist. Meanwhile, the Senate has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill after deliberations on provisions relating to election management, timelines, and the role of technology in future polls. Supporters of the proposed changes say adjustments are necessary to address operational challenges identified during previous elections. However, critics warn that altering electronic transmission requirements could weaken transparency and public trust in the electoral process. According to political observers, the ongoing legislative debate highlights the growing stakes surrounding electoral reforms as Nigeria prepares for another election cycle, with the outcome expected to shape the legal framework guiding future polls. For WADR, Yechin Sasitu in Abuja.
Still in Nigeria, the Defense Headquarters has confirmed the arrival of 100 U.S. military personnel and equipment in the country. In a statement, Defense spokesman Samaila Uba said the deployment follows a recent security agreement between Nigeria and the U.S. Uba noted that the U.S. personnel are technical specialists serving strictly in an advisory and training capacity. While stating that the U.S. personnel are not combat forces, the defense spokesman said all training activities will be conducted under the authority, direction, and control of the federal government in close coordination with the Nigerian military. Meanwhile, in Liberia, the Minister of Justice has ordered an immediate disbandment of a group called the National Fuller Security of Liberia, NFSL. Public anxiety is rising in the country after social media videos and photos surfaced showing dozens of men in formation under the name National Fuller Security of Liberia. This is prompting calls for government intervention and intensifying debate over whether the group is a lawful community safety initiative or an unauthorized security force operating outside state control. Augustine Goli tells us more of this development.
In a press statement released on Monday evening, the Ministry of Justice declared that the government has not granted any authorization for the creation or operation of an entity called National Fuller Security of Liberia. According to Liberian law, the establishment and operation of any security body requires prior authorization from the government through the Ministry of Justice Division of Public Safety. This process includes but not limited to submitting a formal application, undergoing vetting, institutional assessment, a security review, and compliance with tax and regulatory obligations. But the ministry confirms that no such process has been initiated or completed concerning this group. Additionally, the ministry says that individuals associated with this group have not obtained the necessary permits or undergone the required governmental assessments. As a result, the ministry ordered the immediate cessation of all recruitment, organization, operations, promotions, or mobilization activities related to the so-called National Fuller Security of Liberia. In response, an online platform called Fulani Forum released a statement disputing the claim that the National Fuller Security of Liberia is a militia or an extremist group, asserting instead it is a community-based initiative focused on safety and crime prevention. However, the Ministry of Justice warned that any continuation of such activities would be considered a direct violation of the laws of Liberia and would result in severe criminal and administrative penalties.
Augustine Coley filed that report. At the same time, the Liberian government has sentenced two former senior government officials to 5 years in prison each for misappropriation of funds intended for the nation's 2021 census. The verdict delivered on Monday by Criminal Court C on the presiding judge Usman Faker marks a potential turning point in the country's fight against corruption. Lawrence George and Dominic Pay, both former officials of the Liberia Institute of Statistics and Geoinformation Services, were found guilty of misusing approximately $1.795 million allocated for census-related activities between 2019 and 2022. The case was initiated by the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, LAC, following an extensive investigation that uncovered a series of financial irregularities. Evidence presented during the trial revealed a pattern of procurement violations, unsupported payments for workshops, unauthorized compensation, and a failure to remit required taxes.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Return to diplomatic development now as Niger's transitional president, General Abdurrahman Chani, concludes a 2-day official visit to Algeria. The visit, which aims to renew relations between Niamey and Algiers, comes months after diplomatic tensions between the two countries. Both nations have committed to warming their diplomatic relations and revitalizing cooperation in security, energy, health, and education. Christopher Tisho gives us this explanation.
General Abdurrahman Chiani was received with full state honors in Algiers by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune during his official visit. Leading a high-level ministerial delegation, the Nigerian leader held talks focused on strengthening diplomatic ties and revitalizing cooperation between the two neighboring countries. Speaking after the meeting, General Chiani reaffirmed his commitment to deepening strategic collaboration between Niger and Algeria.
It is through these structural projects and the brotherhood between our peoples that we will succeed in all sincerity in building through concrete relationships, visible and long-lasting achievements. I would particularly like to welcome the excellence of the historic relationships that unite our peoples, as well as our common will to further revitalize our fraternal cooperation and good neighborliness.
Both sides pledged to expand cooperation in key sectors including security, energy, health, and education. According to the Algerian presidency, the long-delayed Trans-Sahara gas pipeline project is expected to resume on Nigerian territory after the month of Ramadan. Relations between Niger and Algeria became strained in April 2025 when the Algerian military shot down a Malian drone, triggering diplomatic tensions within the region. Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are members of the Alliance of the Sahel States, known by its French acronym AES, while Algeria has recently moved to improve ties with Burkina Faso. Relations with Mali remain at a standstill.
Christopher Ticho filed that report. Meanwhile, in Ghana, calls are emerging for the government to strengthen collaboration with Burkina Faso. As security sector governance lead at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, Paul Abrampa Mensah emphasized the need for effective partnership between the two countries. His call follows multiple terrorist attacks that targeted some Ghanaian traders in Burkina Faso last weekend. WDL's Accra correspondent Nadia Tete has more of this development in the following report.
Ghana's Interior Minister Muntaka Mohamed Mubarak confirmed that 7 Ghanaian tomato traders were killed when armed fighters attacked the town of Titao in northern Burkina Faso on February 14. He said the gunmen targeted male residents and travelers, separating men from women before opening fire. Survivors are receiving treatment, while Ghana's embassy in Ouagadougou is working with Burkinabe authorities to identify the victims and support the affected.
Unfortunately, our traders with their team were also that camp. And in this instance, we have the very unfortunate situation that we have some Ghanaian men, because the truck driver with other 9 men, with 8 women, were on this particular truck. And sad to say, we lost 7 of the men, and 3 of them got injured. 1 woman also got badly injured. But the other 7 women were not really injured.
The minister says DNA samples are being taken to confirm identities and arrangements are being made to evacuate survivors safely back home. Meanwhile, security sector governance lead at the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana, Paula Brampa-Mensah, says the attack should push Ghana and Burkina Faso to deepen bilateral cooperation.
Some of our people have families across, so it's easy for us to be trapped into the terrorist invasion that is going on. So there are so many ways that our citizens could be entrapped. And therefore, we need some of these corporations, bilateral agreements to ensure that we have coordination of information, operational coordination, systems coordination to ensure that at every given point in time, we are able to share accurate information to our tribal population to save them from some of these traps.
Authorities say efforts are underway to return surviving Ghanaians home as investigations continue. For WDR, Nadia Tete, Accra.
Elsewhere, reactions are pouring in following the adoption of a proposal by the African Union seeking global recognition of the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. The proposal forms part of wider continental efforts to advance the reparations agenda. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama is expected to present a resolution at the United Nations General Assembly in March, seeking global recognition of the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. The announcement was made during Mahama's report to the 39th Assembly of Heads of State and Government, where he spoke in his capacity as AU champion for advancing the cause of justice and the payment of reparations. AU governance expert Ibrahim Khan believes the move has a positive motive for Africa, but expressed concern about the procedure and the expected outcome. We will bring you the details later in the news. In political development, we head to Côte d'Ivoire, where the African People's Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PPACI, is still seeking the release of its supporters arrested during protests last October. The party is now appealing to religious authorities to facilitate dialogue with the government. Sankwi Janko reports.
The PPACI says hundreds of its activists remain in detention 5 months after their arrest during demonstrations against President Alassane Ouattara's four-term bid. A delegation led by the party's general coordinator Emmanuel Aka met with Cardinal Ignace Bessi Dogbo, head of the Catholic Church in Côte d'Ivoire, to seek support for their release. According to the party, the detained supporters, most of them young people, were convicted of disorderly conduct following a mass trial in Abidjan. The case of 3 senior party officials was also raised during the meeting. Damana Piquez, Justin Koua and Ikpo Lagui were each sentenced to 10 years in prison by the Abidjan Court of First Instance. They were also stripped of their civil rights for 10 years and barred from appearing in public places for 5 years, except at their places of birth and work. The PPACI has since launched what it calls the Initiative for the Release of Opinion Prisoners and is engaging religious and traditional leaders in a bid to open channels of dialogue with the authorities.
Sankulu Janko filed that report. You're listening to Newslink live on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM in Dakar. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Nigerian lawmakers clash over proposed changes to Electoral Act. Reaction trails AU proposal seeking global recognition of transatlantic slave trade as gravest crime against humanity. Liberia's Justice Ministry orders disbandment of illegal para-security group amid rising public concerns. And Niger and Algeria renew diplomatic relations as General Chiani concludes high-level visit to Algiers. And still ahead, we do have the guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on wadr.org and do join our live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. Now let's turn to the Gambia, where the government held its third national dialogue, placing human capital and infrastructure at the heart of its drive for inclusive prosperity. The high-level forum on Monday brought together senior government officials, development partners and civil society actors to assess development gains and identity gaps. From Banjo Sang, Donamendi reports.
Held under the theme Harnessing the Gambia's Human Capital and Infrastructural Resources for an Inclusive Leap to Prosperity, the dialogue examined how the country can better leverage its youthful population while ensuring infrastructure investments translate into real improvements in livelihoods. Speaking on behalf of President Adama Barrow, the Minister of Policy, Coordination and Service Delivery, Babukar Boy, said the platform continues to guide policy direction and sharpen the government's development priorities.
This day reminds us that citizenship carries responsibility. We must participate actively in shaping how our country is governed. We must express our views responsibly. The Gambia we aspire to build, a peaceful, developed and cohesive nation, requires unity of purpose.
Chief Justice Hassan Bijalo said the dialogue has also strengthened democratic governance by promoting the rule of law and reinforcing respect for human rights.
The two previous dialogues gave us the opportunity to identify and to reaffirm our commitment to the core national values, the values and the commitment to democracy, to adherence to the rule of law, to respect for human rights, for accountability, and to social and economic process, and overall to the pacific resolution of disputes and differences within our community.
Organizers say since inception, the initiative has attracted more than 15,000 participants, reflecting broad national engagement. This year's discussion are also focusing on boosting productivity, expanding economic opportunities, and building resilience, while aligning investments in roads, energy, and digital connectivity with human development goals. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdona Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
In Mali, a lit night fire devastated the Medina Koura market in Bamako, destroying shops and merchandise worth millions of CFA francs. While no casualties were reported, many traders have been left counting their losses as they assess the destruction of their livelihoods. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
A violent fire swept through the Medina Koura market, also known as Segoni Koura, on the night of Sunday into Monday. According to witnesses, the blaze broke out around 11 p.m. in a kiosk shortly after electricity was restored to the area. The flames spread rapidly, engulfing nearby shops before civil protection units arrived to contain the fire. Although no loss of life was recorded, several stalls and large quantities of goods were completely destroyed, leaving traders in shock and uncertainty.
Today, I feel as though I would rather die, for I have lost everything in this fire. The damage I have suffered is immense, as almost everything I owned was consumed by the flames. We are urgently calling for assistance from the authorities. We truly do not know what to do in the face of the devastating losses we have recorded in this disaster.
Authorities have since launched an investigation to determine the exact cause of the fire. Security and Civil Protection Minister Daoud Ali Mohammed says the government will ensure full light is shed on the incident.
At this moment, I cannot tell you the exact cause of the fire. However, a formal investigation was launched yesterday evening. These inquiries will determine the precise origin of the flames, but regardless of the cause, I believe such tragedies can be prevented. I would also like to take this opportunity to commend the security forces who have been on the ground since last night as well as all the stakeholders in the market who have responded to this crisis.
As investigations continue, affected traders are calling for urgent support to help them rebuild their businesses and resume commercial activities.
Aliu Cham's report there from Bamako and presented by Abdullahi Hassan.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview focuses on the recent adoption of a proposal by the African Union seeking global recognition of the transatlantic slave trade as a gravest crime against humanity. The proposal forms part of wider continental efforts to advance the reparations agenda. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama is expected to present a resolution at the United Nations General Assembly in March seeking global recognition of the transatlantic slave trade. Our guest is Ibrahim Khan, an AU governance expert who shares his insight about this move by the Continental Organization.
Today, the question is even more than reparation, is even more than restitution. It's about, the place that Africa and the global South is occupying in international relations. And as you know, President Mahama wants to take this issue at the UN General Assembly or at the UN Security Council. Who is respecting the UN today? Who is even given the UN the credential that it used to have? The American president has created his own organization, and even some African countries, namely Morocco, I think, and Egypt, have decided to participate in that, institution that Trump is creating to replace the UN. So is the UN really a good place now, to advocate for this kind of solution? And these issues that are agitated by Western countries, where can we find a place not only to denounce this, but also to start thinking about a counter strategy?
The proposal has been adopted by the African Union. What does this signal about continental consensus on reparations agenda? And how unified are AU member states on this issue, sir?
Well, I don't think that there is a problem about reparation. I don't think, and the reparation goes even beyond Africa. You know that in the African Union agenda, the diaspora is considered as the sixth region of the continent. And on this issue, countries like Barbados, countries like Colombia, even the black movement in the US are also part of this strategy, are also supporting this initiative. I don't think that there is a division within the continent, about the reparation. But
right.
As I said, is it now, given the new era of international relations, is it an important issue when you compare it to other issues that are agitated by the rest of the world?
There is no division among member countries. However, this tempts me to ask, what political or diplomatic challenges might the African continent face in building global support for this resolution, particularly from countries historically linked to the transatlantic slave trade?
Well, those are the big problem, the Western world. But I think even in the Western world today, when you look at the movement that are happening in countries like the United Kingdom, in countries like Germany, even in countries like France and Belgium, you realize that people are also really have started to denounce what is happening. I think those are signals that exist in the Western world. But those signals are not enough because when you talk about reparation is so hard. If you look at this issue, it's really deep in international relationships. And I think just a resolution is not enough, to my view. What is important is we need to do studies. There is no idea today in Africa on what is the quantum that needs to be restituted to our country. So we need also, as Africans, to be not only bold enough, but to be better organized when we go in this area to talk about restitution, because it's not just about the principle of restitution, it's also having an idea of what needs to be restituted, what needs to be repaired, and how the reparation needs to be done.
I was Ibrahim Khan, an AU governance expert. In sport news, the Super Eagles of Nigeria are scheduled to face Jordan in an international friendly in Amman this March as preparations continue for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers. However, the fixture depends on an upcoming FIFA decision over Nigeria's eligibility protest against the R Congo during the African qualifiers. The NFF raised concerns about player eligibility, and the verdict could impact Nigeria's World Cup hopes and immediate schedule. Meanwhile, talks are also ongoing for a possible friendly against Iran as the Super Eagles await clarity on their path forward. Premier League to observe Ramadan fast break pauses, and the Premier League has confirmed that the brief pauses will once again be observed during matches throughout Ramadan to allow Muslim players to break their fast at sunset. First introduced in 2021, the initiative permits shot stoppages at natural breaks in play, such as goal kicks or throw-ins. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudoju for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms: X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. I am Imo Edet. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.